Hello and welcome to today's webinar, or let's put it differently, to today's live demo of our identity platform cidaas. As mentioned, we want to introduce our custom identity and access management platform cidaas today. There we especially focus on the state-of-the-art login processes, what we offer with cidaas, on our content management feature, our group management capabilities, what we already have also outlined in our industry-specific webinars, the customer experience you can achieve with cidaas on your digital platforms. For sure, we'll have a look at the two-factor authentication, which we'll offer via SDK or also as built-in capabilities, and our single sign-on capabilities in that aspect. As you see, many of the features or capabilities what I outlined here, we already mentioned in the industry-specific webinars. For sure, we want to show how it relates and what advantages it can deliver to your platforms. Let me shortly introduce myself. My name is Cedric Wittmann. I'm Managing Director of the cidaas ID company, and in that role, I'm also responsible for the overall product roadmap of our identity and access management platform cidaas. My background, I have a master in IT and global studies. I'm working currently on my PhD in computer science, and in my business activities, my goal is to develop digitized business models, especially identity-based business models, which we believe is one of the major future business models what needs to be considered. Our slogan, everything revolves around just one thing. Identity perfectly fits to that, I think, and illustrates the key of the future business models, which is the identity. Let's also have a look at the company. The cidaas Group has 5 branch offices, around 120 employees, and focuses on digitized projects as well as on innovative technologies in that aspect. And now let's switch to the main part, which you are looking to. It's the demo of our application. So I think you see my screen now. Let me switch to the application. We prepared a small demo application, which is just a basic web app with a link to the registration and the login form. We also linked our Authentication apps down there. And let's start easily with having a look at a login form. It's a really simple and easy login form. You see login with the cidaas ID GmbH. So introduction shortly, a small logo. We'll have the capabilities of using different forms for usernames, email, mobile, or username itself. In a classical login with a password. We'll also offer the password authentication options here, and for sure the switch to the registration form, which is also easily configured. Just first name, last name, and email address. Basically, one really important information here is how does this web application now relate to cidaas? Let's have a look in the admin UI. In the admin UI, we have the section apps with app settings. Here in that, let's close that one here. In that aspect, we have the option to configure different applications. In our aspect, we configure just one application. That's the default application. This application relates directly to our theme application, what we have just seen now. In the app settings, we can configure basic information, client ID, client secret based on the OpenID Connect standard. We'll have the option of scopes here, which also comes from the OpenID Connect OS2 standards and relates to the authorization. So what is the application allowed to do? In that aspect, for example, the registration option, and which information is the application allowed to retrieve. So based on the OpenID Connect, the profile, email, phone, address, and some other information in that aspect. We also see redirect URLs and allowed logout URLs here. So basically, in login, where is the application allowed to redirect to, and what are allowed logout URLs. in that aspect. A really important feature are our hosted page groups. So having a look at the hosted page groups, we have one configured, which is bound to this app. The hosted page group allows to completely customize our login forms. So if we go back, you see a lot of forms here: login form, registration form, password forget. All these UIs can be customized completely to your design guidelines, to your capabilities, features, what you want to use. How this works, we'll have a look now. We'll have the section hosted page group, hosted pages in the settings. Here we can create different hosted page groups. And let's have a look into the current configured hosted page group. In there, we see available pages. These are the pages cidaas offers out of the box. Not all of them are always needed. It depends on the scope of features you're using, but basically login registration is mostly always needed. And then there are many more: password forget, multi-factor, and verify email, account verification, consent. So many different user interfaces are needed here. You can configure them in different languages. So complete languages, let's go to the language we just configured here. So English, United States. You see the option how you can configure it currently are URLs. So basically, you can develop your user interface. In our aspect, we used Angular 6 and deployed it in a Docker container and put the link to the UI, to the user interface into the URL field. You also have the option to use HTML content and write your own HTML content code here. Basically, thereby you can really, as mentioned, completely customize the user interfaces. We provide templates for all of the different available pages here so that you can customize it, or you can use the out-of-the-box provided login forms or user interface forms to use in your application. Let's move back. Let's log in to the first, to our profile, what we configured. I want to use different user, basically. I want to use this one. So I'm logged into that user. Also here we have built up a simple profile, a dashboard profile here. You see my image. We can relate to the user profile, move to the user profile here. That's provided out of the box by cidaas. You can also customize that completely. That's available as a template, but you can also build up your user profile completely on your own and use the APIs what cidaas offers. There's a basic set of functionality what we provide in here. You can have much more for sure. The basic user activities, you can change your password here. You can link, unlink accounts, what we'll show later too. You can review your devices, and you can set up your physical verification setup, which relates to the multi-factor authentication options here, which we'll also show in the next step. Coming back to the admin UI, to the app settings, what we have seen, which is basically, as mentioned, the representation of the demo application we have seen now. We for sure have some more advanced settings, what you can configure. We don't want to have a close look at all of them. Just a rough overview. You can configure much more in regard to technical information in the Auth2 settings. You can customize your tokens much more. You have an ID token with OpenID Connect scope, but you can also customize the scope of your access token itself. You can customize the expiration time of your access token and your ID token and refresh token. We'll later have a look at the consent management, how that will work. And in one important aspect here are also the login providers. So you can select login providers here, which are enabled. Login providers are obviously social logins, for example, Facebook, Google, LinkedIn. So you can configure different social login providers here. Configure, they are mostly also based on Auth2 or OpenID Connect. Often we'll have them integrated out of the box. There's a short description how you can configure it, what you need to do, and then you can set it up, and later relate it into the app settings as you have seen. We can do much more. We also have custom providers which you can configure. These are not available in our free instance here, but in these custom providers, you can configure each of the available OpenID Connect and OAuth2 providers, basically, and then you will see them listed down there and also can use them or utilize them in your applications. Let's go back to our root, so to our app settings. Here we'll see, again, in the advanced settings, we've now seen how login providers work. We'll see how registration forms will work. So basically, as you have seen in that aspect, if I log out again, I come back here, I come to the registration form, you see a certain set of custom fields here which are asked for, so email, given name, family name, and the password and confirm password field. If we relate to that, how that works, you can configure in your settings, in the registration field, your overall set of fields, what you will offer in with cidaas, so with your identity management to all applications. So as you have seen, we provided some email, given name, family name, many more features. Many are enabled, some are enabled, many are disabled. This is a basic set what we out of the box provide, but you can configure your own custom fields with following edit form. So you can provide a key, you can select what type it is. So is it a text, number, checkbox, password? So you have different areas here. You can relate it or put it to a certain scope. And for sure, you can enable it. You can put it to required, read only, so it cannot be configured by the user. You can make it internal, that's only internally available, or user will see it. And for sure, which is important in that aspect, is you can configure it for different languages. So you can, based on your field key, give a field name, minimum length, some error messages, some basic ones, which can be utilized in the login registration forms itself then. Coming back to the app settings, as we all know, certain apps or certain applications, certain use cases require certain information. Based on that, we have the option to configure per application the required and allowed fields, which will then basically be shown in the registration form. So the allowed fields are the fields which are shown, required fields are the fields which are mandatory. So that you can configure per application, which basically means if you have one application, you can allow email, given name, family name, password echo. You can sign up with that. In a second application, you then also require birth date. You will edit as an allowed field and required field. And then if a user registered in application 1, then moves to application 2, logs in here, he will only get asked based on progressive profiling for his birth date, because that's the missing information. Vice versa, if the person signs up on the application 2, he will be directly getting asked for his birth date in the registration form. There's some more information which you can configure. For example, if the mobile number or email should be verified during the registration, we have some captcha settings and password policies, which we'll have a look now. That's an easy configuration here. You can set up, let's have a look at the captcha first. You can set up your captcha here. Give your captcha name, client ID, client secret, offer Google captcha here, enable it. Password policy, it's the same. You can create certain password policies here, define a name, some restrictions, so the minimum characters, maximum characters, also the digits and numbers. If there's any special character needed, lower uppercases, and what we also do as a support here, you can have certain strengths which can be out of the box configured. And you will see the level of security in that aspect. So you can also do excellent, then all of that is configured. Coming to the more interesting aspects, which we also mentioned in industry-specific webinars, we have the option to activate multi-factor authentication to make it necessary always. So if we activate that, save it, the multi-factor authentication is always required in that application. if we now move back to our login form here, we can log in with our user here. We'll log in, and then we'll have the option what are we have the choice to select our preferred two-factor authentication options. In that aspect, I'll probably go with our FIDO2. In that aspect, we'll go with our email here. So I'll now get an email sent, use the verification option, what I have here. Here's comes the code, let me enter it. Hopefully I used it correctly, yes. So then we'll go to our profile section, again, what we already have seen. And here, as mentioned, I can configure additional things. So basically, let's have a short look how multi-factor authentication works, how I can configure it. Let's have a look at our smart push, for example. So I get this QR code shown here. I also have our Authenticator app on iOS opened already here. So as you see, that's the option, German, because I'm using it in German. I'll scan my code, which is working. I now get shown the number, and in my configuration here, I then can also select the 78. I get like a successful push is configured for my account. Vice versa, I also see it here. So I see it on two sides. That's a smart push configuration. I can do the same for the TOTP functionality. So I again scan it, go here, see that my TOTP configuration works. I get like code, which I can enter here, 615730. Correctly, yes. So that's done. And I now have two multi-factor authentication options configured in my Authenticator app. Coming back to other options, as mentioned at the beginning, they are not only options which can be used with the Authenticator app. As you have seen, email, SMS are available here. I can have an IVR, but really much more important are FIDO, WebAuthn, for example. So I can use biometrics also on devices without any additional application there. So let me remove that, and then we can configure it from scratch again. You can also see how that works. I'll do the configuration. It asks me what do I want to use, USB key or the integrated sensors. So basically, I want to use the integrated sensors here. I'll continue and allow with the Touch ID the configuration here. Logging out here, and we can try the complete thing from scratch again. So we'll log in. Then I have all my options now available, also the ones which I additionally configured. And I now use my FIDO WebAuthn here, which works basically without any issues. So, come back to our webinar here. As you have seen, I can make it, disable it again, because for next things, it's easier to not have it activated. You can also configure which of these configuration options you want to offer your customers based on our options here. So in the demo, we activated all of them now, but obviously it makes sense to only activate a subset which are necessary for the applications we want to use. Coming back to the app settings to see our next steps here. In the advanced settings, we now arrive at the bottom part, so the multi-factor authentication options. But what is much more important, or I wouldn't say much more important, what's also really interesting are the flow settings. So as you have seen, we have the option email, mobile username enabled. I can reduce that set. I can just allow email, mobile. I can just allow mobile only or email only. And I have much more configurations which can be used. For example, the password authentication, which we enabled as you have seen, or the deduplication, which will show in the next step here. Basically, if we log out again, we can log out here. We go to our register form. Let me just try to register newly with some more or less the same information. Let's create an account, and you see in the deduplication, similar users are found. Now I have the option to link both users or to continue as a new user. So if I want to link that, I can log in with my existing user and link the both accounts in that aspect, which will be basically I get redirected and log in. Hopefully I have the correct password. No, it's not that one. So that was the correct password now. Coming back, we want to log into our account. Go here, and then we can go to the linking section, and now we see both accounts are linked together. So now I can log in with my sales at cidaas account, and I can also log in with my user at cidaas account. I can also unlink them again. I also have the option, if I have already two accounts, I can link them with that feature so they get sent a mail, and then they can log in to link both accounts again. Some other important features are, for example, the disable email address. So allow disposable email addresses. By default, that's disabled. So cidaas by default doesn't allow disposable email addresses, 10-minute email addresses. You can also allow that if that's necessary, but that's normally not what you want, because you want to have correct email addresses to get in touch with your customers, users, and you have the option to validate a phone number. That's when we use a third-party service to validate if that's a correct user and mobile phone number and exists with that provider. You have the option to use a fraud detection system, enable it, and based on the fraud detection system, you can perform certain actions. For example, trigger the multi-factor authentication only if there's a suspicious behavior, or trigger a webhook or email to the user. You can also use the register with login information. That's especially important for login providers, so social logins. So then if you activate that in the logins, if you do a login with a social login, that's an implicit registration, and we'll use the login information directly and register the user if he's not existing. And for sure, auto login, that in the case of an auto login, you in the case of registration, you automatically get logged in and can continue, for example, in your basket, in your cart, to finish the shopping. Moving forward to the communication concepts, what we already have seen sometimes. So I've discussed we can send an email for identity linking. We obviously can send an email for password forget and all that. That can be configured in the template section. So we have a huge set of different templates which can be used. As mentioned, verify account, so that's like an opt-in. In that aspect, I can have an invite, so completely different sets of templates. I can configure them via email, SMS, and IVR, depending on which template it is. Can select a language. In that case, for example, email. In the verify account, I'll select email and select the link and the language English. Find template, and we'll see we can configure it here. So that's HTML template. You can also go to the code here and see how it's built up. In that aspect here, we'll provide a set of different attributes which are available. For example, the name of the user, the verify link, the account name. So a complete different set which can be utilized and included into the mail template. Coming to the content management, which we'll have see already in the app settings, we'll have the option to create certain content groups. One content group should summarize the a certain perspective in that aspect. For example, the privacy policy. Another perspective would be terms of use. If we go inside that, this one, we'll have in one group's different consents. So in that aspect, I have a cidaas privacy policy consent. I can create some more. That's especially important in a group of companies, or also if I have different applications focusing on different user groups, I can have different privacy policies. I can have different terms of use. In that, I have the option to have a versioning included. So I have version 1, 2, 3, whatever. So continuing version numbers. And in there, I can configure the URL, which can be used, the content. But let's create a new one. I can have consent based on scopes, so scope consent, and I can include a URL. Can also make it locale specific, so I can use different languages here to configure the URL, so I can show it in privacy policy in English and in German. And let's also show how it can be utilized in the registration fields itself. We've configured one privacy policy registration field here, which is field type consent. I can select certain scopes. I can make it enabled and required, select the language, and then I have a consent label. So that's basically what is shown here. Give us a preview. Let's change it. Remove that completely, just to show what should be done. So I can add set consent, for example, in that aspect. And then agree and then I can give a preview. So that will look like that. I agree to cidaas privacy policy. So that's basically our link here. So there will be a checkbox in the registration form, which I can save now, or I can include it additionally in the app settings, in the consent section, which will be down there. So I'll have also the option to link it here. That's basically a basic subset of the configuration. As you see, there is much more. For example, opt-in reminders, and we can set up custom templates, webhooks. So there's an additional bigger set of configurations which can be utilized. That's the main part of that. We have seen the multi-factor settings, and now we'll have a look at the group settings, which we highlighted often. So I have the option to configure certain groups here. I can create a new group. I can give a group type if I didn't, if I have configured one, but you can do now. I can create company type, group type company. Can select certain rules for that. I can create a new group. Select the company type and company as group type. I have no parent group. I select like ID1 or group 1 as ID, group leaders ID. I can put a certain logo, group description here, which I don't make for now, so it's just a simple group. Can build it up, and then I'll have the option to edit the group to see which users are in there. I can invite new users, and for sure I can delete the group. And as mentioned in the beginning, I can relate or can build up hierarchies. So I have a parent group in that aspect. So I select my group readers ID here, sub group 1 which might be developers there in that aspect, for example. And then I'll save that. I can go here and I have a certain subgroup in my group readers ID, so I can really build up hierarchies to separate certain user groups. That can be internal users, so focusing on, in that aspect, the company readers ID and developers, or it can be externally, so I can distinguish B2B and B2C users, also subdivide them a little bit more. And for sure, one user can belong to many different groups here. So it's not one user is in one group, he can be in many different groups. And so I can have different perspective from groups here too. Let's have a look finally to the users. So we have a user section here. The two users I have registered. Basically, this one user, what I used now in the presentations, is also linked with a second email address here. I see what multi-factor authentication options are configured in that aspect. For sure, the user activities he's doing, and some further things like login locations, device insights I can see here. Quite interesting is also the group roles section. I can give him here additional roles based on cidaas. So in general, overall, I can give him an admin role, and I can give him certain roles in the context of a group. Let's say in that aspect, we had, I think, group readers ID, and then he can be a user of that group. And then that's done. I can also give him an additional group, which is developers in that aspect. So I can also add him to the developers as app developer, and then he is now part of two different groups. He is part of the parent group as a user and part of the developers groups of the subgroup as app developer. We'll also have some reports available where you can see all the aggregated data, you can see communication activities, so the emails, SMS, and all the other communication tools, push, IVR, what I used, what the status of the communication activities is. We can see again provider and device insights and some more information about users, usage, utilization, much more. One important aspect what we'll focus on with cidaas is that all our features are available as APIs. So all functions, features, what we offer here are available in our APIs. You can have a look at our API documentation. In that aspect, we'll build up a Swagger UI completely customized to you. So you just can view it here and you get a Swagger UI built up and pre-filled with all the information. So in that aspect, with our client ID, which is our demo application, and I can select a certain redirect URL, and then it's built up based on what we need. So that's a base URL. You'll see some examples then here, how it's used. And then you see all the features what we offer. You don't need to use our UIs, you don't need to use that. You can use just the APIs to include it in existing applications and software what you already use. I think we'll keep it like that for today. We'll move to the end, I would say. Thanks that you all joined our webinars, that you had a look at the live demo today. I hope you had some interesting insights. If you want, you can see all the current webinars in our YouTube channel. So we recorded all of the webinars. You can just have a look there. And one important thing what we mention always in the end is do a jump start. So discuss with us or our partners what can be the best for you and how would be the best start with a custom identity and access management system or identity and access management system in general. And we'll offer a cidaas free plan, which will advise you just use it. It's for free, up to 500 users. You see the most of our features there already. You can utilize them. And I think that's a good start. And most important is to start the complete thing in the digitalization and not wait and see how it's going. So just start it. That's the best thing. And that's it for today. Thank you very much for your attention and see you soon.